Truth does not remain where it first appears. It moves. It travels through memory, through speech, through translation, and through the slow reinterpretation that every generation performs, often without noticing. What once seemed fixed gradually reveals itself as dynamic, not because truth abandons its integrity, but because understanding widens as experience accumulates. I have come to see that rigidity often arises not from devotion to truth, but from fear of its movement. In earlier reflections, change was considered as a sign of maturation rather than betrayal. Now, that insight unfolds further. If truth matures within a single life, it also circulates among communities, crossing linguistic borders and historical thresholds. It becomes a current moving through time. We receive fragments shaped by ancestors, reinterpret them through contemporary awareness, and then pass them onward, altered yet still recognizable. In this way, truth is neither invented anew nor preserved untouched. It is carried. The Hellenic philosopher Heraclitus is remembered for observing that one cannot step into the same river twice, for new waters are always flowing. This fragment, preserved through later testimonies, does not deny continuity. The river retains identity even if its waters change. Likewise, truth remains discernible even while its expressions evolve. I recognize in this image a profound humility. Understanding must remain responsive to the movement of reality itself. Across the Taoist tradition, the classic attributed to Laozi, known as the Tao Te Ching, opens with a quiet warning. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Tao Te Ching, Chapter 1. This teaching does not reject language. Rather, it reminds us that words are vessels, not the living current itself. Language channels insight, yet no formulation exhausts the depth it seeks to express. When I cling to a single phrasing as final, I risk mistaking the container for the flowing source. Within the Hebrew tradition, preserved in the Christian New Testament, the teaching attributed to Yeshua the Nazarene, Rabbi of Galilee, offers another image of movement. The wind blows where it wishes, and its sound is heard, but its origin and destination remain unseen. That's in John 3:8. The metaphor speaks of spirit, yet it also illuminates the character of truth. It moves with freedom, audible in its effects, yet resistant to confinement. Communities attempt to anchor it with doctrine, but its vitality cannot be entirely enclosed. These teachings emerge from the distinct traditions, Hellenic philosophy, Taoist wisdom, and early Jewish teachings within the Christian canon. They are not identical, nor should they be blended into a single system. Each speaks from its own historical soil, yet together they reveal a shared awareness. Truth lives in motion. Recognition of this movement does not dissolve differences among traditions. Instead, it deepens respect for the diverse path through which insight has been encountered and transmitted. I noticed that resistance to this movement often arises from a sincere desire for certainty. Fixed formulations promise stability. They offer a sense of protection against ambiguity and change. Yet, when understanding hardens prematurely, it risks becoming brittle. Traditions that refuse reinterpretation may preserve words faithfully while losing the vitality those words once carried. The form remains, but the living current recedes. Transmission across cultures illustrates this tension clearly. Teachings shaped within one linguistic framework rarely transfer without transformation. Concepts embedded in ancient Hebrew, Greek, Sanskrit, or classical Chinese carry nuances that no translation fully replicates. Each translation becomes an act of interpretation, shaped by the intellectual climate of its time. Far from weakening truth, this process reveals its resilience. The current continues to flow even as the riverbanks shift. Historical awareness also reveals that every generation has revised its understanding in response to new knowledge. Scientific discoveries, social transformations, and ethical awakenings compel reconsideration of inherited beliefs. Such reconsideration does not necessarily negate earlier insight. Often it clarifies what earlier formulations could only partially express. When revision is guided by humility rather than convenience, it participates in the maturation of truth rather than its distortion. Yet movement requires discernment. Not every change represents deeper understanding. Some adaptations simplify complexities or conform to prevailing pressures. The ethical responsibility then is not merely to accept change, but to evaluate it carefully. Does a new interpretation illuminate reality more clearly? Does it foster greater coherence between belief and lived experience? Or does it merely replace one rigidity with another? These questions remind me that stewardship of truth involves both openness and vigilance. Communities function as the vessels through which the stewardship unfolds. Collective memory holds testimonies of past encounters with truth, scriptures, philosophical texts, liturgies, and oral traditions. These serve as anchors, preventing the current from dissolving into pure subjectivity. At the same time, living communities continually reinterpret those testimonies in light of present circumstances. Without reinterpretation, memory becomes static. Without memory, reinterpretation becomes rootless. The balance between continuity and renewal sustains the flow. I have also come to see that truth movement carries ethical implications beyond intellectual life. Interpretations transmitted across generations shape laws, moral norms, and social relationships. When interpretations stagnate, they may fail to address new injustices or emergent human needs. When interpretations change irresponsibly, they may sever vital connections to accumulated wisdom. Thus, the flow of truth is not merely philosophical, it influences how communities enact justice, compassion, and responsibility. Cultural encounter further expands this perspective. No single civilization contains the entirety of human insight. Each tradition observes reality from a particular historical vantage point shaped by its environment, struggles, and aspirations. When traditions encounter one another respectfully, they do not collapse into uniformity, rather they expose blind spots and illuminate overlooked dimensions. Dialogue becomes another channel through which truth flows, broadening collective awareness without erasing distinctive identities. This movement invites humility regarding claims of final possession. If truth flows through languages, generations, and cultures, then no formulation, however profound, can claim absolute completeness. Every articulation becomes provisional, awaiting further clarification through future experience. Such humility does not weaken conviction, it refines it. Convictions remain, yet they remain open to refinement as understanding deepens. At times, I sense that rigidity emerges from an understandable longing for permanence in an unstable world. Yet permanence sought through immobility proves fragile. What endures is not rigid structure, but resilient adaptability. Just as a living organism survives through continuous exchange with its environment, Living truth persists through continuous dialogue with changing circumstances. Movement, paradoxically, becomes the condition for continuity. So, truth appears less like a monument carved once and for all, and more like a river sustained by countless tributaries. Individual insights, communal memories, translations, reinterpretations, and cultural exchanges all contribute to its ongoing flow. Participation in this river requires steadiness of character combined with willingness to learn. It asks for reverence toward inherited wisdom and courage to revise when deeper clarity emerges. I'm not claiming to stand outside this current. I am carried within it, shaped by traditions received and by questions that arise in the present. Understanding forms, falters, corrects, and expands. Each correction does not negate what came before. Rather, it integrates earlier insights into a wider horizon. In this way, the flow of truth becomes both personal and communal, historical and immediate. When we observe this movement with patience, rigidity loses its appeal. Stability is still honored, yet it is recognized as dynamic stability, capable of responding without losing identity. Truth continues its passage through cultures, languages, and generations, neither fully possessed nor entirely elusive. It lives as a current, steady enough to be recognized, fluid enough to remain alive.